I have a question for you this morning. All right. How many here think they're going to heaven? Raise your hand. Well, why do they come to church? How many think they're going to hell? We have a very holy parish here. Well, you know what the answer is? We just don't know. That's the answer. If somebody says to you, are you going to heaven? The best answer you can give is, I hope so, I don't know. That's the answer. Suppose somebody says, are you going to hell? Well, you might have a pretty good idea about that one. But you know what? Church has never said that individuals are going to hell. The only one that we know is in hell is from Scripture, Judas. And if you read Dante's Inferno, there are a lot of other people there, if you read the Inferno. But we don't know. All we do know is that there is a heaven and there is a hell, and we would like the first option and not the second option. Now, Jesus is very clear that there is a heaven. He speaks about this day you will be with me in paradise. He talks about the sheep and the goats. The sheep will be at his right hand and enter the kingdom of the Father. And all those goats will be at his left hand, and they will be condemned to hell. So, we have it on good authority that there is a heaven and there is a hell. Unfortunately, today we have some people in high places who are causing confusion, saying, well, there is no hell. And recently, some person in a very high place said, the devil is just a symbol of evil. Well, is God then just a symbol of good? Who did Jesus wrestle with in the desert? With himself. Was he tempted by a symbol? When Jesus spoke of Satan, was he just speaking of a symbol? Or is there a reality known as Satan? And both Scripture and the Catechism of the Catholic Faith attests to the existence of heaven, of hell, and of Satan. Now, today's reading, it's a very important reading because people are asking who's going to go to heaven. And there were people during the time of Jesus, the Palestinian Jews, who believed that anyone who was a Jew was going to achieve heaven, eternal salvation. And as you read in this teaching of Jesus, he says, well, that's not exactly true. So you can see that he wasn't making friends with some people who thought, well, we have it made. We are guaranteed heaven. Quite honestly, nobody is guaranteed heaven. And that's what Jesus basically says. We are not guaranteed heaven. And he also says that getting to heaven is difficult. It's like having a camel pass through the eye of a needle. He's never said that getting to heaven was easy. But there are people today, again, this is another popular heresy. They believe in universal salvation. Everybody's going to be saved. Well, kind of makes a mockery of the Gospels. It makes the church superfluous, but most of all, it endangers souls because there's a reminder, what? That we do have a free will, and that we must exercise our choices in life in a proper way. But it goes even deeper than this. As we get to the end of the reading, middle of the reading and end of the reading, Jesus says that just being in some way familiar with him, you met him in the marketplace, you waved to him while he preached. He says that's not enough. See, it would be like me saying, Senator Scott is a good friend of mine. Well, I met Senator Scott a few times at St. Matthew's house. Now, he might not remember me, and he probably doesn't. But that doesn't make him a good friend of mine. He's somebody I shook hands with, somebody I met. But there's no deep relationship with the senator. I mean, if I were the senator, I'd reach out to me more often. It'd be to his benefit, But you see, Jesus is saying, this just happenstance, this very peripheral engagement with him is not enough. What you need in order to get to heaven is an intimate relationship with Jesus. He literally has to be your friend, who you have come to know through the Gospels, through the church, through the sacraments, and through the practice of your faith, making efforts to get to know him. And that's the key to getting into the kingdom of heaven. And unfortunately, most of us do fall short of that intimacy with Jesus. Now, let me just give you a couple of hints how to get to heaven. I mean, that's the job of the church. That's why we're here. That's why you come to church. You want to get to heaven. As I said, if you're already going, stay home. Send in your envelope, but stay home. Because we want Father Bob to get to heaven too. All right, what's the first thing you have to do? First thing, you have to get to know him. To know him is to love him. How do you get to know him and love him? Read the Bible. We just went through the gospel this morning. We're introducing you to the real Jesus. The real Jesus does not pull any punches. He's not just out there telling you what you want to hear. This is not, some feel-good religion where, hey, we're all going to heaven. That's not what Jesus says. Jesus says we have to strive to enter into the kingdom by attaching ourselves to his person. It's a personal engagement with Jesus Christ that gets us to heaven. Get a Bible. If you don't have one, go to our bookstore and get one. Go online and order one. Read it. Read it. Especially read the Gospels where we meet Christ in a special way. Second thing is this. We have to make some efforts to have a program that's going to bind us to know Jesus in a deeper and richer way. We need guidelines. We need formulas that are going to help us. Where do we get them? Where do we get them? Well, there are numerous saints in the church who have given us guidelines, a blueprint of how we can make the gospel alive in our lives and how we can really come to know Jesus intimately as our friend, the one who walks with us, the one who talks with us. One of the ways that I have found is through what we call third orders in the church. You may have heard of third orders. So certain saints have a rule of life, a program for their followers. This is true of, example, St. Francis, a Franciscan spirituality. You can go online, you can look up Third Order Franciscans. You can join a third order, and they can give you their program to grow in holiness, to come to know Jesus, and to see him acting in your daily life. Third order of St. Francis. Same is true. Third order of St. Dominic, a Dominican spirituality. How you instantiate this discipline into your daily living and follow Jesus as did St. Dominic and his community. You might decide to look into the Carmelite spirituality. They call themselves the secular Carmelites. And you don't have to go to a monastery, a convent. Your home becomes your monastery. Your home becomes your convent, where you are in intimate relationship with Jesus because you're following the rule of holy people who became saints and did go to heaven, and they're giving you the formula how to get there. There's one that I'm going to mention to you. Of course, there are many others. Some of you may have heard of St. Francis Desales, and there are third order oblates of Francis Desales. But Francis Desales was a fantastic saint and a great spiritual director. He went to Geneva in Switzerland after the Protestant Reformation, and his dates were from 1567 to 1622. And what he did there was, first of all, he tried to bring the people back to the Catholic Church. The church had a terrible rupture, losing a lot of people to the Protestant Reformation. And he realized that it was important, once again, to reattach people to the truth of coming to know Jesus as their Lord. And he got that idea from where? The Protestant Reformation. Because Luther and Calvin emphasized the scriptures. And they emphasized a personal relationship with Jesus. And so he used some of the ideas of the Protestant Reformation and reconnected them with Catholicism, with the truths that were revealed to us through the apostles. And so he once again used scripture, a holy way of life, and the sacraments to help people get to heaven. Let me be clear about this. A lot of people think that just because they receive the sacraments that they are going to heaven. Well, once again, that's not correct. The sacraments are aids. They aid us in our journey to heaven. Baptism, Eucharist, penance, marriage. They aid us. They are food for the journey. But they feed the faith and the relationship that we have with Jesus so that we can grow in that relationship from baptism on. Many people went to Francis de Sales for spiritual direction. And he then collected his teachings on the spiritual life. It's called An Introduction to the Devout Life. And it's not simply for priests or sisters or nuns or religious brothers. It's for all of us to grow holy in the place where we are in life. And Francis said very wisely, he says, therefore you can bloom where you are planted. Bloom where you are planted. No matter where you are, you can grow in holiness. Grow in holiness. And use the sacraments and use the church to help you to achieve your ultimate goal, which is heaven. Now, I have asked the bookstore to acquire, I think we have about 50 copies of The Devout Life in the bookstore. If you want to do yourself and your family a great favor, I would suggest that you buy a copy of Introduction to the Devout Life. It's probably one of the greatest gifts that you can give to yourself, aside from purchasing a Bible. Now, having said all that, I will close by saying this. I hope to meet you all in purgatory. God love you.